I want to do this thing. I
think we were hoping for something from Historic England, but
Really, unless it's come in very, very recently.
I've looked over the last 3 days, haven't seen anything,
No.
so
No. Which is a bit annoying.
very frustrating, yeah.
always have that up just in case I get any sleep.
No, that's
So, Julie, so this is joined on Teams. So do you do what you do? I've done that, yeah. So this is all live now. No. That is
Yeah.
Have you got a slide? Do you? Is that what you do? You've got a slide? Yeah. No, it's not
That's
live
what I
yet. Said to you. No, starting.
We are not expecting any fire practices or anything like that. So if the alarm does sound, it's likely to be a real event. If you hear the emergency alarm, please leave the building by the nearest safest exit, which is likely to be that door, or if for any reason you can't have that door, it'll be the civic suite entrance that you all enter the building by. Please go to Stanley Point G on the car park, which is just outside those windows, and stay there until Mr. Tobin says it is safe to do otherwise. Apologies for absence or members away on official council business.
Councillor Lawson is had an accident, so what the
Chair, apologies from Councillor Tony Booth and Councillor Hayfield. Received apologies from Councillor Johns. Councillor Marianne Humphries is here as a substitute, and also in relation to Councillor Moss, who's in.
Thank you very much, members. Are you happy to note those?
noted.
Councillor Mrs. Humphries, welcome back. I hope you enjoy the meeting. And members, as you may have just heard, that Councillor Mawson has had a fall and is unwell. Are you happy that we send our best wishes for a speedy recovery? And similarly to Councillor Moss for his continuing recovery.
Yes.
Could you do that, please, Mr. Tobin? Does anyone have any disclosable pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest they'd like to bring to our attention?
Thanks, Chair. I've got
Riley?
a pecuniary interest in agenda item number 8, the Dordon Neighbourhood Plan. And I'm employed as the clerk for Dordon Parish Council and I've been involved in the submission of the plan.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? No? Thank you very much. We now move on to the minutes of the board held on the 5th of December, which I'm assured were very admirably chaired by my colleague in the red carding. Are you all happy that we take those as a true and correct record? Thank you very much. Agenda item number 5, members. We haven't had an Article 4 direction for some time. So here's one, and as you remember, we have our new Heritage Supremo here to talk about it. So, Mrs. Ledbetter, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. For the build up. I'd like to draw your attention to the agenda item number 5. There's a circulated report before you and a supplementary piece of information regarding a small amendment that I'm asking you to consider regarding the extent of the boundary of the direction for the former primary school. So to start with the generality first, the direction really is something that is put in place in order to try and ensure that changes to what we would consider to be non-designated heritage assets are considered fully and able to be brought before you necessary. And this sets out protecting 2 particular buildings in Water Orton, both of which I'm sure you're familiar with, the North Primary School and the train station. So if you have any questions, if you feel free to anything you like about the order.
Members, any questions? Any notes of congratulation? I have to say, personally, I think this is very positive. Protecting non-scheduled assets like this is very worthwhile. And I think it is appropriate that we don't have an Article 4 direction every 5 minutes, but when they're necessary, they are a very worthwhile tool. So, members, can I see a proposer? Thank you very much. We'll take one of you as a proposer and one as a seconder, if that's all right.
He's the heritage man, he can be the proposer.
Any other proposals? In which case, all those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. We move on to the provision of waste and bin storage facilities for new developments as a supplementary planning document. As you may be aware, this document went through the LDF meeting last week. Mrs. Barrett.
Thank you. Following the LDF meeting last week, what I've put in front of you today and emailed out on Friday is some suggested changes from the LDF subcommittee. So it's an additional 1 sentence in red on this paper, And then it would just be an information note at the end. Members were concerned about the issue in terms of the distance to places of storage, and then also to point out the assisted bin collections. I'm happy again to take any questions. Thank you.
Members, any questions? Councillor Burt?
Are you all right? Okay, it's fine. I appreciate the assisted collections. I think it's something that's not always brought into attention enough that service is available. And again, I had concerns initially about the distances, especially with shared units. I think it kind of brings into focus again the issues with roads and access. And I think we've all got issues with unadopted roads or roads that haven't been completed standards, and I'm really pleased to see the strengthening of that. But still wonder whether we're doing enough to make sure those roads are in a fit condition to make sure that the wagons can access it and that emergency vehicles and other such things, and whether there is anything more that we could do to kind of strengthen those roads to make sure that roads are of an adoptable, reasonable standard.
We are actually producing a residential design guide, and that may be a particular issue that we could pick up through the residential design guide itself. In terms of the waste and the bin storage SPD, it is for guidance in terms of the provision of that particular issue. But the issue for the adopted roads would be through the planning application process, but also perhaps through the guidance through the residential design guide. But we'll keep that as an issue.
There were some questions on the suitability of that with the LDF, and I think at that meeting that the John sort of comment was actually we should do whatever we can to ensure that roads are adopted to if you like obviate the need. But a point well made nonetheless.
Thank you.
Councillor Dirk?
Further to that, is there anything that we can do to ensure that roads are actually completed to the standard that's required? Because I know in the past there have been instances of developers saying, well, we won't complete the road until all the building that has been completed because it will be destroyed by the deliveries, etc. And then when the houses are all sold at the end, magically it just doesn't get done. We end up with roads that are not up to standard. Is there anything that we can do to actually enforce that through the planning process earlier?
I think that a condition, a breach of conditions notice.
Just taking a step back, Mr. Chairman, the case law has now shown that in fact you can't condition a permission such that the highway be adopted. What we can do is condition the construction of the road, and then obviously we take advice from the county council on that construction as if it were adopted. But that's as far as we can go. We can't actually condition that the road be adopted. In other words, it become a public highway. That's what we cannot do.
Sure. Your permission, I would just add to that if a developer proposes it to be adopted, then that's fine, or they could also enter into a Section 106 agreement, but that's something that they would have to agree to. So as Mr. Brown says, that at the moment is currently a limit. So it would be enforcement as a breach of planning control if they hadn't constructed to the standard that was in the application.
So I think the strongest method is actually trying to get them to agree to adopt it in the pre-application meetings. Councillor Humphries and then Councillor Park.
Is it possible to refuse planning if there is proposed that the road is unadopted in the first place? And I'm just thinking of one particular site where half the road's adopted and the other half isn't, but at least 15, 16 houses with 80-metre walk to get to the bin store.
I think not, but Mr. Brown?
No, Mr. Chairman, as I said, because you can't force a condition to say that it should be adopted, which means you can't refuse that it's because it's not adopted.
Okay.
You just sulk in the pre-application meetings. Councillor Park.
I'll practice sulking, Chair. One instance that I have an estate which is in exactly the situation, fully occupied, all completed, roads not completed, and indeed the footpath that was perfectly good and serviceable until the access road was put through, is now a total mess, and it's been a total mess for 18 months, basically. I'm wondering if there's anything we can do about the disruption of an existing footpath, basically.
Mr. Smith, the County Council, I'm afraid, Mr. Chairman's Highway Authority, if there's an agreement between the developer and the Highway Authority to adopt the road, a Section 38 agreement under the Highways Act, it will be the Highway Authority that actually enforces that particular section of the Act.
Thank you.
Any other comments, members? No. So can I see a proposal? Thank you very much. And seconder? All those in favour? Thank you very much. That's adopted unanimously. And then we go on to the supplementary planning documents for planning obligation for open space, sport and recreation.
Again, this report was considered by the LDF subcommittee last Wednesday. And so what you have before you is the comments that were made and the proposed SPD. But what we would ask is, following the meeting of the LDF, there was 4 main issues that came up at the LDF, and these are again summarised in the paper before you, and again was emailed out on Friday. So, as you'll see in section 2 of the additional paper, that there are some additional changes that we'd like to make. So the recommendation would be to adopt the SPD, but subject to these additional changes. And again, happy to take any questions.
Members, any questions?
It was just about the maps, so the 20-minute maps. And it kind of struck me that if we want to encourage people to travel greenly and to abandon their cars, that maybe we need to do some more modelling and actually look at other timescales for transport. So how long would it take? So I know that obviously Arley is in that 20-minute or 10-minute zone, but actually to get here on a bus would be over an hour and 20 minutes. So for those people that don't drive and for those people that we want to encourage, can we look at some of the other modelling that's not just about cars?
We'll pass that on to Simon Powell and his team to see if there's any future data that we can use in any future updates of the SPD, because I agree that it isn't perfect for the rural nature of North Warwickshire.
Future-proofing, isn't it?
Yeah.
We want people to move on. We need to lead them.
And if you need any practical comments on that, Councillor Bell abandoned her car earlier on today.
Yeah, not voluntarily.
It abandoned you.
Councillor Hancock.
It was highlighted in the LDF actually that one of the things that we're using for this is the Sport England model. 20 miles or 15 miles can take us to the other side of the borough. If, for example, Polesworth and Dordon are having 2,000 houses, the provision should be based where the development are happening, not 20 miles down the road. That does not help the communities that are having the development. And I think even though this is guidance, and I understood and we went through it for a long time, I do think that as a planning board, we have to ensure that we're protecting the open space and the playing pitches going in the areas that need them, not within the sport model of 20 miles, 15 miles or whatever.
I'd absolutely like to support what Councillor Hancock has said, and of course mentions I do with monotonous regularity the need for the sports hall in Polesworth and Dordon, which is absolutely crucial and needs to be done. I know there's 3 million set aside, but you know, this is going to be the largest community in North Warwickshire, and we're having the houses, we need the facilities. Absolutely.
Are we all happy? Any other questions? Given that, then I will move that the planning obligations for open space, sport and recreation and associated calculated documents as amended by the paper on your desks be adopted. Seconder? Thank you very much. All those in favour? It's unanimous again. Thank you. And we now move on to the not sure I get the description right. submission of the Dordon neighbourhood plan for neighbour consultation. Mrs. Barrett.
Thank you. This is the neighbourhood plan for Dordon. They have to go through a number of hoops in order to get to this stage. And this stage is for this council to do 6 weeks of consultation. And I'd just like to point out that in section 6, next steps, we have actually received all of the details now, and they are actually included within the paperwork that you have before you. So what we would be doing, subject to your agreement and approval, would be going out and arrange the 6 weeks consultation from this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any thoughts? Councillor Parton.
Thank you, Chair. I know sadly Councillor Mawson isn't here tonight because of his accident, but I know he will absolutely support that this goes through. I've been very much involved in the whole process of Folesworth. I know what hard work it is, and I know how far the Dordon team have worked to get this where it is. So I would absolutely support what they are doing and support moving to the next stage. What has been a lot of very hard work.
Worth thanking.
Yes, I agree. Supposing we thank the chair.
Absolutely. And I have to say, I think I've mentioned this before, but there's clearly an awful lot of work gone into the Dordon neighbourhood plan. And for my, I mean, it's all good, but there are 2 things I particularly wanted to draw your attention, and that is the use of the National Design Guides. And I was going to say, and of course, we're looking at that ourselves, but Mrs. Barrett stole my thunder on that. But I look forward to us getting our own design comments. And then the issue over the key views, which I think this, if I remember properly, is the first neighbourhood plan where there is protection of, we're trying to get protection of key views, and I think that's important. At some point, if we ever get back into the summer, members, I think it will be worthwhile for us to have a tour around to look at planning applications that have been developed, so we can see the results of what we've done. But at the same time, if we can, to try and take in the key views at Dordon, so that although the only ones in the borough that will have any form of protection, it'd be good to actually go and look at those. And I'm looking at our heritage czar because there's reference in here to a report that you brought to the last meeting on non-scheduled sites, and it's good to see a reference in here to non-scheduled sites as well. Any other comments, members, or are you happy for this to go for consultation? Yeah. So we'll see a proposer. Thank you very much. And seconder. Thank you very much. All those in favour? Thank you very much. I'd like to welcome former Councillor Winter back to the Council House and to the Council Chamber. Over to you, Mr. Winter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'd like to thank the planning department on behalf of the Dordon Parish Council for all the help and support that they've given us over the last 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for going back to service, John.
Sorry?
Good to see you again.
Thank you.
Now, members. Well, I might not be here then. So we now, members, move on to the planning applications. I would say if anybody at this point wants to leave, you're welcome. But if you want to stay, you're welcome to stay as well. Members, the first application we've got is for the Folly Sykes Barnes Church Lane, Crawley. Application number 455. We have no speakers on this particular issue. Mr. Brown, would you like to introduce your report?
Right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me just run through the slides. Members should remember this a few months ago, similar application. The property is on the north side of Church Lane, outside of Crawley. This is the existing arrangement, as you can see. Remember, you can see the property here on the right side of the road. A forward elevation of this shows the existing arrangement. The problem that we had at the time was the low level of this ridge here, which prevented large vehicles from entering the courtyard at the back. And also you can see a wall here with a repeat wall at the back, which meant there was very little turning area. This resulted in an objection from the Highway Authority because cars were parked over the road, as you can see here, and the Parish Council particularly was concerned about that. So the application to retain this arrangement was refused, and since then the applicant has come in with a revised arrangement to raise the level of this particular ridge here above the pilasters, as you can see here, and also he used to remove those two walls which I referred to, which means this roof would be a suspended roof at the rear across here. And you'll see, Mr. Chairman, that as a consequence of this amended plan, the Highway Authority has withdrawn its objection, but in order, because of the structural, perhaps the structural instability of the building, there is a condition on there about looking at the particular, when the application goes to the building regulations, to ensure that the actual roof is supported.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Any comments, members, or questions? Any proposal?
Move the recommendations.
Thank you. The seconder? Thank you, Mark. All those in favour of the recommendation? That's unanimous. Thank you. The next application is number 455 for Rosny Sunday Lane Finale. We have no speaks on this, so Mr. Brown, anything to add?
Mr. Chairman, this is a resubmission of a previous application, and it's exactly the same. The application is to retain a single-storey extension on the back of the bungalow, or the side of the bungalow, as you can see here. These are the outbuildings which are referred to in the report. It's a sunline, effectively, as you can see here, outlined in blue. As the report indicates, when this application was first received by the Planning Board and it subsequently went to appeal, there was information which was not available to us or to the inspector. That has now come in with this particular application. So this is new information which you had not received at the time of the last application. Basically, as the report indicates, it shows that these pink areas could be added to this bungalow under permitted development in any event. And what is being argued is that these two areas are far bigger than the retention of the sunline edge blue. The recommendation is to run with that, Mr. Chairman, but clearly to withdraw permitted development rights. So these two pink areas then are not allowed to be developed with the benefit of that permitted development right. But a separate application would have to be submitted.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Members, any comments or questions?
Could you just clarify? So we'll end up just with the blue sunline.
Exactly, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
Any proposal, members?
Moved.
Moved and seconded. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. We now move on to application 261 and 265 from 2021. The Homestead 82 Main Road, Alsbury. Mr. Ian Ritchie has indicated he'd like to speak. If you take the chair while Mr. Brown introduces his report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just run through the slides. Members will be familiar with this. It's the area, the building outlined in red here on Main Road, the main road through the village. An existing arrangement is here with the residential dwelling here and the barn here with its extensions at the rear and access off Main Road. These are the existing elevations. This one at the bottom is the one facing the road, with the barn here and the house or the cottage here. The proposed elevations are here, with the front at the back, the front at the top, I beg your pardon, and the rear elevation here underneath. And that in slightly more detail. I don't intend to go through the report, Mr. Chairman, because it provides a summary of several other previous reports. But we're now in a position where, in fact, I can certainly recommend support is given to this particular proposal. We're still waiting to hear from Historic England, as the report indicates, and therefore the recommendation, Mr. Chairman, takes that on board, that position on board.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Ritchie, welcome back to the council. We haven't seen you for about 10 minutes. Good to see you again. I'm sure it comes as a complete surprise to you that Mr. Tobin will now explain the rules for public speaking. Mr. Tobin.
Good evening, and probably more familiar with them than I am, but I'll outline just to say you'll be given 3 minutes in which to address the board, so I'll let you know when your time starts, when you have 1 minute remaining, and then when you're done. Your 3 minutes starts now.
Thank you, Chairman and members. Good evening. Taking down any part of a listed building deserves serious consideration. In this particular case, the barn is attached to a more significant farmhouse where it forms part of the setting on which work has already started but has had to stop. Unfortunately, the barn now bears little resemblance to its original form, with its thatched roof being removed about 20 years ago, replaced with an asbestos roof raised and supported on modern skinny rafters, some of which in turn are supported on scaffold boards instead of purlins. The barn is not, as originally thought, a single building, and is in fact made up of 3 buildings, all of which have been extensively and unsympathetically altered during the latter 20th century. The structural condition of the barn buildings is very poor, although there are some limited heritage elements which are worth saving and incorporating into the 2 replacement dwellings, the extent of which is covered in the officer's report. Only a few people have actually been inside the building, some of whom are members of this committee. But I'm sure all the shocked and disappointed about the poor condition, the extent of inappropriate alterations, and the very limited amount of heritage fabric. Numerous structural and heritage reports have been submitted, the most recent of which was prepared by the same consultancy retained by St Paul's Cathedral, and gives a very detailed account of the status and relevance of the barn buildings. To date, as a matter of interest, the cost of the reports, etc., required to make the submission before you amount to a total of £40,080. Modernisation works carried out by the previous owners were poorly executed, that results in a legacy of problems, as well as additional works not originally envisaged. As a consequence, the cost of refurbishment of the farmhouse has considerably increased, causing a viability issue, which now requires enabling funding to complete the works. The proposal is to carefully dismantle the existing barns and replace them with 2 new dwellings of a similar scale and appearance, which will generate the additional funding. A separate viability report has been prepared by Greenwood Consultants, which highlights the shortfall, taking account of the projected sale price of the farmhouse as £420,000, and the applicant accepting a significant reduction in the acquisition value of the site. No doubt this council, along with the population of Osprey and the applicant, urgently wants to see a speedy resumption of works on this site, which has remained an eyesore in the centre of the village for far too long. It is therefore hoped that members will support the recommendations made by their officers to approve the current proposal and enable the applicant to focus on the practicalities of completing the job they started so long ago, but to which they still remain committed. Finally, I'd just like to say, with the wealth of heritage information that we now possess, perhaps we should give consideration to renaming the property something other than the homestead. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Do you have any questions for our speaker? Councillor Mitchell?
Good evening. Just one of the things, in the bad weather we've been having and the winds and everything, we are finding that there's debris coming into the village onto the pavement, and we have got 2 people in the village that go past on mobility scooters, electric scooters, and we've had to go out ourselves, sweeping the floor, sweeping the ground. Is there any way you can have a look at anything that's coming loose and just have a look over it and just give us a idea that everything is safe and sound?
Yes, certainly. Thank you for drawing that to our attention.
Yeah, it's only the high winds that we've had recently. It's not happened before, but it was quite a lot that came down, and she couldn't get past before it was cleared.
I'll make sure that that's attended to, but I'm also hopeful that we're actually going to be getting back onto that building, and that that issue will not one that will be carried forward.
Yeah, I knew I was be speaking to you tonight, so I didn't bother to do anything else about it. So thank you very much for that.
Anything like that, please feel free to draw that to my attention. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions, members?
If I may say, as the other member for the area, I'd be glad to see something happen. There was a time when it was 3 or 4 phone calls a week.
You weaving that into a question.
But now I'd be pleased to see it happen, and it'd be nice to come back. And it looks like that. It's going to be good. Thank you.
I think there's a question mark at the end of that. Would you like to respond?
Yeah, I totally share the view that, as I mentioned earlier on, been an eyesore in the centre of the village for far too long. It's unfortunate that a lot of time has been taken up by going through extensive research into the privilege of the property, when, as I say, its true value can be seen by a simple site visit internally. But I understand that it's a serious business taking down any heritage building, and this has to be part of the process. But it has caused a lot of disruption, and I'm sure a lot of misery to some of the residents of Osprey and anybody who drives past the site.
Chair, if I just may add to that, actually, when I think about the amount of the Georgian stables at Haggington Manor there, they managed to do a complete survey on that as a building in a lot quicker than they did this. So it's English heritage sometimes our own worst enemy. Thank you.
Mr. Ritchie?
I totally agree with that. I mean, as you know, in the current time, we're still waiting for a response from Historic England, and they were provided with the latest round of reports back in mid-October.
Just a question.
Can we?
Okay.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Ritchie.
Thank you.
Councillor Dover.
Thank you. It's really the criticism of institutions and the amount of time that has already been highlighted that this has taken. I think both the applicant and his business, for want of a better word, and this council have worked over a long period of time to try and move this forward satisfactorily for all people that are involved in it. And this hasn't been helped by some of the statutory bodies taking a long time to reply. We are still waiting for a reply now. I think if these replies had been forthcoming much quicker, then the building would be in much better condition than it is now, and there would have been less risk to the residents of the area, and that some of that can be pointed directly towards the tardiness of those agencies. So I would like to thank our officers for the amount of work that they put in, as well as the applicant, and I would like to move that we get this moving as quickly as we can by supporting the recommendations tonight.
Thank you very much. Any other members? Mr. Brown, before we move to a vote on it, could you give us some guidance in terms of timescale associated with the recommendations?
Both myself and Mr. Ritchie, Mr. Chairman, have been chasing Historic England on a monthly basis following tonight's decision. Whatever that might be, assuming it goes with the recommendation, I'll formally write to Historic England to give them a deadline of a fortnight to come back.
Council?
What happens if they don't come back within that deadline?
Then
We'll write to them again.
Well, Mr. Chairman, they've had several reminders. I think I'd like to bring it back here and seek legal advice, but I think that given that we can make a decision, it's not a listed building of national interest. I think we could take a proportionate response, is what I'm saying, Mr. Chairman.
Legal advice, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, we need to look into the detail further, so I'll be very reluctant to offer at this meeting. Say if we get a response from Dorothy in that time scale, then it may not be a live issue. But I could work with Mr. Brown pending the next board, so that we don't have a response, we have an idea of where we can go.
Thank you.
Check. We're all saying the same thing. We're all saying, let's get on with it. Do we actually need a response from Historic England?
We do. I'm afraid they're a statutory consultee.
Okay.
We have to have regard to what they say, but we can't really make a decision without having had regard to what they say.
Okay.
Any other comments, members? If not, I'll move recommendations A, B and C, I'd like to add on D that we've now formally disbanded the subcommittee that we set up to look at this issue, because I think we're now at the point where we're there, really. Councillor Davis?
Ask for clarification on that. We set up that subcommittee, but I was under the impression that we had widened its remit to look at other buildings that.
I've completely forgotten that. Yeah, absolutely. No, I'll withdraw D in that case. No, but maybe we should have a meeting on this.
Easier in the future.
Yes, absolutely. So members, just A, B and C then. So I'll propose that from the chair.
Second.
Can I see all those in favour? Thank you very much. We now move on to application number 638 for the Homestead Wishaw Lane, Middleton. No speakers, Mr. Brown.
Again, so it's another homestead, this time Middleton. Site plan here. The homestead is the bottom of these three terrace properties here. The access here is to Atlantic Nurseries, which members may recall from a couple of meetings ago. There's an existing workshop here to the side, which is the report which indicate was granted several years ago now for an MOT car garage and workshop. And this is, you can see the building. The actual residential properties are here on this photograph. The building is here, and the application, in fact, in front of you at the moment, is for the land at the rear. As you can see from the report, Mr. Chairman, we've managed to negotiate a reduction in the size of this. The building, which is the retrospective application currently, is the building here. We're seeking to have a reduction in the size of the site, such that the area, which in fact is coloured green here, would be returned to landscaping, and the applicant has agreed to that. As you'll see from the report, Mr. Chairman, there's considerable local support for this. Given the presence of the site next door to Atlantic Nurseries and the current consents on the site, we feel this is a proportionate proposal which we can approve in that the little green belt harm is caused.
Any comments, questions or proposals, members?
Recommendation.
Moved and seconded. Can I see those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. We now move on to application number 508, 6 Bolters Lane, Wood End, Alstow. We have two speakers. The first is Helen Prince, if you'd like to take the speaker's chair, while Mr. Brown introduces the report. Mr. Brown.
Again, Mr. Chairman, this was referred at the last meeting. A site visit was held on the weekend before Christmas, and just to remind members of the slides, the application site is edge red here, as you can see. Number 6 is here, the objective is here at number 4. That's the existing arrangement which members saw on the site with the conservatory at the back. And this is the proposed new conservatory. That's the rear elevation, and particularly this is the side elevation, which has caused the objection. Members will, for those members that didn't go on the site visit, the members that did went to the back of number 6, and they also visited number 4 and went into the rooms at number 4 to see the potential impact of the development. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We normally have a note of the site visit, Mr. Chairman.
There should be one attached, Mr. Chairman, as an appendix. Yes, appendix on page 9A100. There's an appendix.
Thank you. Welcome to the council. Welcome back. I think you spoke on our last time. As last time, Mr. Dover will explain the rules to you. So, Mr. Kogan.
Good evening. As we did last week, you'll be given 3 minutes in which to address the board. So I'll let you know when your time starts, when you have 1 minute remaining, and then we can still speak to you. Your 3 minutes starts now.
Firstly, I'd like to thank the members of the council for taking time to come and visit the site from my side, to see things from my perspective. I hope that the visit showed you why I objected to the application and the severity of the impact this build would have on my property, which already has limited light at the rear. And as I previously said, some of the light I do get comes through or is reflected off the current glass structure, which has been there longer than I have. I've been told how this would be allowed under permitted development if the applicant didn't work for the council, but permitted development rules do not negate my right to appeal against permission given for or even get an injunction to stop a development that both overshadows and blocks light from my property, which I seriously believe is the case in this situation. If the application is refused, I have no doubt that the applicant will have other options available to him, even if that meant selling the property and finding somewhere else that was more suited to what he wanted. Conversely, if the application is granted, I won't have any other options. I won't be able to sell my house, or at least only sell at a price that wouldn't allow me to buy anywhere else. And to be honest, that would make me feel like I was being forced out of my home of 32 years because the applicant just wants to square off his kitchen. He knows the impact it will have on my property because it would make his back room and kitchen dark too if it wasn't for the roof lights and bifold doors in the extension, which will let light into his house but not mine. So basically, I will be sentenced to living in brick surrounded darkness, paying ever increasing electricity costs to light my room sufficiently to live in. The mere thought of both over the past few months has not done wonders for my mental health. I'm only one person. I'm the only person this development affects, but to me the impact will be huge and permanent, and I hope that you will consider that when making your final decision on this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, do you have any questions for our speaker? No? Well, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
We also, members, have speaker Anna Beddington, who is joining us on Teams. Welcome to the meeting virtually. For the sake of good order, Mr. Tobin will also explain to you the rules on public engagement. Mr. Tobin.
Good evening, welcome to the meeting. And as with all speakers tonight, you'll be given 3 minutes in which to address the board. So I'll let you know when your time starts, when you have 1 minute remaining, and then at the end of that 3-minute period. So your time starts now.
Thank you. My name is Anna Bebbington. I'd like to speak in support of the application that David has made. So far, the work that David has carried out has significantly improved the amenity space for the surrounding properties. He's taken out very tall and obtrusive leylandii trees that have been removed to the boundary, to the access boundary of number 4 and to number 6 and to the rear boundary, which previously significantly impeded the light entering number 4 and number 6. And due to the location of the sun path, which travels across the rear of the properties east to west, the shadow of number 4, due to its height and length, actually casts shadow onto number 6. This can clearly be seen if it is reviewed on the Google Maps. The proposed extension replaces an aged conservatory, which it is to replace with a flat roof extension of a similar height. And although the projection is 5 metres along the boundary, it is no further than the current outbuildings that are on number 6, which are due to be demolished as part of the works to be carried out. The height is within permitted development constraints, and the extension projects into the garden behind a 2 metre existing high fence line. The furthest point projects the same distance as the outbuildings, and along with number 6, it's not much further than what the existing property actually extends on the opposite boundary. David has ensured that the work that's been completed so far has been in line with building regulations, and it's been carried out so far significantly improves the condition of the property. And David is creating a modern and sustainable property in terms of energy efficiency for modern living, and is insulating and replacing the conservatory, which is aged and no longer fit for purpose due to its weather tightness and thermal deficiency. So I would like to support David's application.
Thank you very much. Members, do you have further questions for our speaker? No, there are no questions, so thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Members who'd like to start the discussion? Councillor Phillips.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I understand that that this is allowed in permitted development, and there's very little we can do. It's a shame that it is a shame, but just generally that this is the sort of thing that lots of residents think that we, the planning board, can help them with. And on visiting the site, I can understand the lady's plea. I think it is going to make a canyon of the area. It's going to make it very dark. I'm concerned that this is coming right to the edge of the boundary, and the guttering is going to be hanging over the other end. And I think that whoever put the fencing up there has done it as a punishment rather than dividing the land up. But as I say, I don't want to labour the point. I know that we can do little about it, like lots of things that come up before us. And as I say, I'll just leave it at that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Any other comments? I think, Councillor Phillips, it would be worth, with the note of any decision, that we ask the applicant to look at what they could do within the spirit of neighbourliness, to see if they could amend the fence or something to improve the flow of natural light. I'm not sure what they could do, but we can certainly pass on the board's request.
That would be appreciated, Chair. As I say, as you visited, I mean, it did seem. I know that it's not part of the planning permission, but that fencing did seem more of a punishment than just a boundary fencing.
Councillor Derrick.
Thank you. I wasn't able to make the visit, unfortunately. What you've just said there was what I was going to comment on. That if we could ask them to have a look at that, I think that it is an important point in the interests of neighbourliness, really.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely, as Councillor Phillips said, the board's hands to a large extent are tied by the nature of the planning regulations that we have to operate within. But applicants can still go a little bit further than what the requirements are. Any other comments, members? We have Councillor White.
Yeah, I'd support Councillor Phillips's position, to be quite honest. I mean, I think if something could be done in the spirit of neighbourliness and fairness about opening up the fence and allowing more light in, then that'd be great, but recognise that all of this is permitted development.
Anyone wish to make a proposal? I'll move. Yeah. Proposed on seconder. Any other alternative proposals? If not, we'll move to a vote. The proposal is that planning consent is granted as per the recommendation printed in your papers, with an additional informative to the applicant to ask him to consider what else is possible to do to amend the proposal to allow more light, and certainly with regard to the fence in particular. I see those in favour and those against. That's carried, so planning permission is granted. Members, we now have to move on to application number 373 for 23 Dordon Road, Dordon, Tamworth. We have one speaker on this, Mr. James Morganshaw. Mr. Morganshaw is joining us, I think, by team. So, Mr. Morganshaw, welcome to the meeting. You may not be shocked to hear that Mr. Tobin is now going to talk to you about the rules for public engagement. Mr. Tobin.
Just going to present the report first.
Oh, sorry, absolutely. What's about? Would you like to introduce your report, or do you have nothing further to say?
I just want to go through the slides, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, you can see the red line there, which is the house and the garage at the back. The objector's property is this property here, which is the bungalow, and the conservatory at the back. In terms of the photographs, then the applicant's property here, the garage at the back, which you can just see here, the bungalow, side window here, perhaps more easily seen on this particular property, on this particular photograph, with the conservatory at the back. This was the original proposal that was amended such that there'd be a hip roof attached, and that reduced the height slightly, but obviously had quite an impact here in terms of removing the mass. Members visited the site just before Christmas, and there's a note of that site visit attached as an appendix. One of the issues that rose during the site visit was the actual extent of the extension, and this plan shows where we are. The dark green area is a two-storey side extension. The blue areas at the back are a single-storey rear extension. So the conservatory is here, and there'll be a rear extension, single-storey extension adjacent to it. The two-storey extension does not come all the way back here. There were some questions about that in the site visit. Also, members saw this particular window here, which you saw in the photograph. I've touched or circulated an amended plan which came in just before the weekend. I just had the opportunity to circulate it to you, which went to members this morning. That is that the bay window on the right-hand side, which members saw, which would be here on the plan, has been removed. As you can see, those windows are now flush with the front elevation. That has gone to the objector next door. Obviously, that's gone to the objector in the last 24 hours, so we've not heard back anything from the objector. I think from the benefit of the members this evening, you must assume that there is still an objection, because members on the site visit were understood that the main purpose of the objection, or the main thrust of the objection, was the impact on the conservatory at the back, perhaps rather than the side window. That's all I have to say, Mr. Chairman. I'm just remind members that there is the amended plan which has come in.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, and apologies, members, for my haste earlier on. We will now go to Mr. Morganshaw, and Mr. Tobin will now explain the rules of public speaking. Mr. Tobin.
Good evening and welcome to the meeting. As you probably observed with the other speakers, you're given 3 minutes for the rest of the board. So I'll let you know when your time starts, when you have 1 minute remaining, and then at the end of that 3-minute period. Okay. Your time starts now.
Thank you very much, Council, for having me this evening. As Jeff has highlighted out for us, that obviously the original plans that we went for have been changed during the application process. This has obviously changed the scope of our development, and we have swiftly and tried to do it as quickly as possible, obviously to try and expedite the process, but demonstrated that we're happy to amend accordingly without actually affecting too far into our intended goal as well. With that in mind, as Jeff has kindly highlighted, removal of the loft extension to bring it back down to the existing height, but just over the extension, and then the removal of the bay to allow that light into the property as well for the objector. With the objections raised, we do sympathise and understand, hence making the adjustments as quickly as we can as well. What we want to try and do is obviously still attain our goal of a house that our family can grow into, as we have grown over the recent months, but also minimising impact and still maintaining that neighbourly feel to the environment. Obviously, what we've seen as we've moved into the area is that neighbourly feel across Dordon as well. We want to continue that, but actually bring our family into it with a space that we can grow into over the years. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Members, do you have any questions for our speaker? No, there are no questions, so thank you very much indeed. Members, any comments, proposal? Councillor Parsons.
Thank you, Chair. I do welcome the fact that the plans have changed and have been amended with some consideration to the neighbours, and I would urge that that process continues through the works that may be to come. The removal of the bay window is, I think, a significant concession, particularly impacting on the side window that we've seen there. So yes, I would. I understand the problems of light through the conservatory, but essentially this is within permitted development, and I think there has been some movement on the plans which is to be welcomed.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? If not, is there a proposal? Councillor Riley and Councillor Hancock. I see all those in favour of granting consent. Thank you very much. That's granted.
Sorry, could I abstain?
Oh, absolutely. Sorry. My face again.
No.
Any other abstention? You've broken our. You almost unanimous on everything. So, members, we now need to move to agenda item 10, which I propose being the exclusion of public and press for the remaining item of business. Can I see? Thank you very much. All those in favour? Thank you. I'll just wait a second to